The equipment loading bay hummed with gear preparation until Sergeant Major Williams's laughter echoed through the facility. "Let's see how far you get with that, Martinez," he taunted, pointing to the heaviest pack. The slight woman in standard fatigues approached the gear without hesitation as 21 words changed everything. The effect was immediate. The loadmaster's equipment checklist fell from his hands, scattering across the concrete floor. Senior NCOs stopped their preparations, and expressions shifted from mockery to disbelief throughout the staging area. No one had expected the smallest soldier to handle combat loads designed for special operations. No one had expected the woman they'd dismissed to demonstrate strength that exceeded their own. No one had expected the truth. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story captivated you, please consider subscribing. We share powerful stories of unsung heroes every week. The forward operating base equipment staging area buzzed with pre-deployment gear preparation and urgent load distribution. Banks of equipment racks cast harsh fluorescent light across focused soldiers, illuminating gear displays marked with green ready indicators and red overweight warnings. The air carried the scent of canvas and metal polish, mixed with the tension that came with preparing for high-risk combat missions. It was 0600 hours on what had begun as routine gear loading at Forward Operating Base Alpha, preparing for Operation Mountain Strike in the Afghan Highlands. Private First Class Rosa Martinez stood at her assigned equipment station, positioned away from the main loading coordination area. Her dark hair was secured in regulation military style, no special identification visible on her standard combat uniform. Early 20s, with compact build that spoke of endurance rather than obvious power. Her attention moved between equipment manifests and gear assignments, while her physical presence was deliberately minimized in the male-dominated staging environment. To observers, she might have been any support soldier, perhaps recently assigned to equipment duties, or another soldier tasked with lighter gear while remaining distant from heavy combat loading. She occasionally checked items on her manifest, her work systematic and largely ignored by the loading crew. Unlike the infantry soldiers and combat specialists who dominated the staging area with their deployment experience and physical conditioning, she wore no visible markers of combat training or specialized qualifications. Just a support soldier with basic equipment training and an assignment to handle lighter gear while remaining separate from heavy combat loading operations. The operation involved preparing critical equipment loads for Special Operations Team Bravo, distributing combat gear, and maintaining load specifications during mission preparation. The deployment proceeded according to established protocols, equipment verified, weight distributions calculated, and coordination maintained with various unit elements. Staff Sergeant Johnson, a veteran infantry leader with multiple combat deployment credentials, supervised the gear loading operations with practiced efficiency, moving between equipment stations and monitoring load distributions throughout the staging facility. Combat equipment loading had strict weight requirements regarding individual capacity, Johnson explained to the loading team. Their procedures for conducting gear preparation strictly follow established infantry doctrine and physical standards. Sergeant Major Williams occupied the primary loading console, his face reflecting the intensity of mission preparation responsibility. A career infantry soldier with 22 years of service, he appeared focused in his combat uniform, as if coordinating special operations equipment had heightened his operational awareness during recent preparations. Rosa watched from her isolated equipment station, her expression revealing nothing. Only occasional adjustments to her gear manifest suggested emotional response to the loading operations. When Staff Sergeant Johnson called for load distribution verification, heads turned briefly toward Rosa's position at the equipment assignment station. Private Martinez has been handling standard equipment assignments, Staff Sergeant Johnson announced. She may have completed her basic load requirements. She approached the central loading area with measured professionalism that seemed at odds with her support assignment. Something about her movement, bearing confident, steps purposeful, eyes constantly evaluating the equipment displays, caught the attention of a distinguished master sergeant seated near the main coordination station. He observed her with growing interest, noting details that didn't align with typical support soldier profiles. Sergeant Major Williams, authoritative and demanding, watched her with narrowed attention as she prepared her equipment report. The sergeant major was known for his direct approach to physical standards and operational efficiency. Today, he wore leadership authority with intensity, his uniform bearing the patches of previous special operations deployments. "Present your equipment load assessment for the record," instructed Sergeant Major Williams. "Private First Class Rosa Martinez, equipment specialist," she replied. Her voice was quiet but clear, her military bearing evident despite her support role. Staff Sergeant Johnson began his loading questions, and Rosa's responses were technically accurate and detailed, but delivered in such a controlled tone that Sergeant Major Williams soon grew visibly impatient. Several times, loading personnel had to ask her to clarify equipment specifications. "Private Martinez," Sergeant Major Williams finally interrupted. "The entire loading team needs to understand your equipment status clearly. Explain your load configuration in operational terms." "Yes, Sergeant Major," Rosa responded, barely adjusting her technical vocabulary. Staff Sergeant Johnson continued. "Private Martinez, can you explain your equipment handling activities and load management procedures? I've been conducting standard analysis of gear assignments using established loading systems," she replied, her voice still frustratingly technical. "I've identified standard equipment patterns and load requirements across various mission categories and distribution parameters." "And what patterns have your systems detected?" "I've documented baseline equipment patterns consistent with established loading procedures and standard operational protocols. No significant discrepancies detected in basic equipment categories within normal support parameters. Standard load analysis indicates routine equipment coordination using basic military gear." "Have you documented these equipment findings?" "Yes. I've completed standard equipment archives of all loading data with basic load analysis according to established documentation protocols." "Was this equipment analysis distributed to loading teams?" "It was processed through appropriate equipment channels per standard loading reporting procedures." The operations officer, Captain Davis, approached for additional questioning with obvious skepticism about equipment analysis from basic support personnel. Tall and imposing with extensive infantry ribbons that reflected specialized experience, he moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to evaluating reports from support soldiers. "Private Martinez, what specific training qualifies you to handle complex combat equipment loading?" "I completed basic equipment systems training at the Army Equipment School, including standard loading procedures and basic weight distribution courses." "And what level of operational combat experience?" His tone clearly suggested the answer would confirm her limited operational credentials. "I achieved standard certification in basic equipment systems and loading procedures," Rosa responded professionally. Captain Davis smiled dismissively. "Private Martinez, how could you possibly understand the physical demands of special operations equipment when you've been handling basic gear for only 12 months? Something flickered across Sergeant Major Williams's face. A brief moment of recognition quickly suppressed. He studied Rosa more carefully now, noting details he had previously overlooked. "Sergeant Major," respectfully, Staff Sergeant Johnson interjected. "Private Martinez's equipment analysis should be evaluated based on the quality of her loading data, not assumptions about her physical capabilities." "Agreed," Sergeant Major Williams replied, his eyes remaining focused on Rosa with renewed interest. Captain Davis adjusted his approach. "Let me rephrase. What direct combat loading experience do you have that would qualify you to assess physical requirements from equipment analysis?" Rosa paused before answering, her eyes briefly meeting those of the distinguished master sergeant near the coordination station. "My background includes some practical application of loading techniques in operational combat environments," she said carefully. "Could you be more specific about this combat loading experience?" "That information involves previous assignments that may not be directly relevant to current equipment parameters." Captain Davis looked toward the senior NCO. "Sergeant Major, if the private lacks relevant combat loading experience, her assessment of physical requirements should be weighted accordingly in our operational planning." "I'll allow continued questioning," Sergeant Major Williams ruled. "Private Martinez, please provide more detail about your relevant operational background." Rosa's expression remained neutral. "My previous operational experience involves classified equipment programs." "How convenient," Captain Davis remarked sarcastically. So we're expected to give operational weight to your equipment analysis without knowing your actual qualifications to handle combat loads. I'm providing technical analysis of equipment loading using established military logistics protocols and gear distribution procedures. As the questioning continued, Rosa responded with increasingly sophisticated details about advanced loading techniques, combat equipment recognition, and operational gear analysis that made several loading officers exchange meaningful glances. She referenced specific weight distribution capabilities, load management procedures, and operational equipment methods that seemed well beyond the knowledge base of a standard support soldier. When shown an equipment display of the current combat loading configuration, her eyes studied it with intensity that suggested deeper familiarity, her professional composure revealing subtle signs of personal investment in the operational outcome. Do you recognize specific elements of this combat equipment configuration, Private Martinez? Captain Davis asked. Yes, it represents the current loading posture for Special Operations Team Bravo, with particular emphasis on mission-critical equipment distribution and weight management capabilities. And your equipment analysis of this configuration has confirmed what exactly? Your technical analysis hasn't identified any physical requirements that would alter our current loading procedures. Rosa's voice remained steady and professional. My equipment load analysis has documented baseline loading patterns and operational indicators. My recommendations for standard equipment monitoring were included in my basic loading reports. In the equipment staging area, the older Master Sergeant with extensive special operations deployment experience watched Rosa with growing intensity, his weathered face reflecting concentration as if trying to place half-remembered details from previous operations. The morning hours passed as Staff Sergeant Johnson returned for follow-up questions, asking Rosa about specific loading protocols used during the equipment operations. Can you explain the standard gear distribution procedures for a special operations loading of this scope? Johnson asked. The equipment systems would establish primary and secondary load networks covering all designated gear categories, she explained, her voice maintaining technical precision. Standard procedures require continuous loading analysis with redundant equipment platforms and regular weight assessments to loading commanders. And if those equipment systems detected unexpected load requirements or operational changes, the loading specialist would immediately alert gear commanders using priority equipment channels and reconfigure distribution systems to provide enhanced tracking against critical weight limitations, she explained with a level of loading sophistication that raised eyebrows among the equipment team present. Sergeant Major Williams leaned forward, his patience with technical jargon wearing visibly thin. Private Martinez, I've asked you repeatedly to communicate in terms relevant to combat loading. This staging area cannot effectively utilize equipment analysis that requires constant technical interpretation. I apologize, Sergeant Major, Rosa replied, her communication style barely becoming less technical. The older Master Sergeant in the staging area now leaned forward at his position, his eyes never leaving Rosa's face, recognition seeming to dawn slowly, his expression shifting from casual interest to something approaching amazement. Captain Davis seized on the Sergeant Major's frustration. Perhaps Private Martinez's reliance on technical terminology reflects her limited understanding of how equipment analysis actually applies to operational combat loading and physical requirements. Staff Sergeant Johnson responded immediately. Sir, that's an unfair characterization of the private's equipment expertise and loading capabilities. Noted, Staff Sergeant. Sergeant Major Williams replied firmly. Captain Davis, please focus your questions on the private's equipment findings rather than speculating about her physical capabilities. Captain Davis nodded in acknowledgement. Private Martinez, in your professional assessment as an equipment specialist, was there anything in your loading analysis that would indicate modification of current gear distribution procedures? Rosa looked directly at the main equipment display for the first time during the briefing. My equipment analysis suggests loading patterns and operational indicators that warrant standard accountability awareness. That wasn't my specific question. Based on what your equipment systems detected, should current loading operations continue as planned? Based on my technical analysis of equipment data, current operations should continue with standard loading protocols in established equipment sectors. Captain Davis's expression hardened. Are you suggesting that loading teams have inadequately assessed equipment requirements? I'm stating that my recommendations for standard equipment analysis aligned with the loading parameters implemented for this operation. The staging area stirred with quiet equipment discussion. Sergeant Major Williams tapped his pen once against his station, restoring order. Private Martinez, Sergeant Major Williams said, his voice carrying obvious impatience. You need to explain that equipment assessment in practical terms the entire loading team can understand. But instead of answering, Sergeant Major Williams did something unexpected. He pointed to the heaviest combat load in the staging area, a massive rucksack loaded with special operations equipment weighing over 120 pounds, designed for the strongest soldiers in the unit. You know what, Martinez, Sergeant Major Williams said with a mocking smile. Since you're so confident about equipment analysis, why don't you show us how well you understand physical requirements? Let's see you handle that full combat load. The staging area fell silent as every soldier present looked between Rosa and the massive equipment load. Several soldiers laughed quietly, anticipating an embarrassing failure that would put the support soldier in her place. Captain Davis joined the mockery. This should be interesting. That load is designed for special operations soldiers who've been training for years. Rosa approached the equipment load without hesitation, her expression calm and focused. She examined the load briefly, checking the weight distribution and equipment configuration with professional assessment. That's a full special operations combat load, Staff Sergeant Johnson warned. Most infantry soldiers can't handle that weight properly. The laughter continued as Rosa positioned herself beside the massive rucksack. Soldiers gathered around, expecting to witness a humiliating demonstration of physical inadequacy that would confirm their assumptions about support personnel. Rosa bent down, gripped the equipment load with perfect form, and lifted it smoothly from the ground. Without strain or hesitation, she shouldered the 120-pound pack and stood at attention. The massive load balanced perfectly on her frame. The effect was immediate and electric. The laughter died instantly. Sergeant Major Williams's equipment manifest nearly slipped from his grasp. Several soldiers physically stepped back as if witnessing something impossible. Captain Davis's expression transformed from mockery to complete shock. Complete silence fell over the staging area as understanding dawned across various faces. Rosa stood motionless with the full combat load properly shouldered, demonstrating strength and technique that exceeded most soldiers present. Rosa continued in her normal controlled voice, but now everyone was listening intently. This combat load configuration meets special operations standards for high-altitude insertion missions. The weight distribution is optimized for extended movement through mountainous terrain. She adjusted the load straps with practiced expertise. I learned these loading techniques during my deployment with the 75th Ranger Regiment's Special Operations Equipment Teams 3 years ago. I was also the lead equipment specialist attached to Task Force Mountain Thunder, which Sergeant Major Williams personally coordinated during classified operations before our program was restructured. She systematically demonstrated proper loading procedures while maintaining the full combat weight on her shoulders. These equipment configurations aren't just about carrying weight. They're about maintaining operational effectiveness while bearing mission-critical gear through the most demanding environments. Sergeant Major Williams attempted to maintain operational composure, but his voice carried obvious recognition. Private Martinez, this represents a significant departure from standard equipment procedures. My team and I were reassigned to regular Army equipment units after Task Force Mountain Thunder was classified and restructured 3 years ago. Rosa continued calmly, still shouldering the full combat load. I've spent the last 18 months working under standard equipment assignments while waiting for another situation where my specialized loading training could enhance operational effectiveness. A younger equipment specialist near the loading station looked up with confusion. This doesn't make sense. Task Force Mountain Thunder's equipment specialists were all reported as transferred to different assignments after that program was restructured. The distinguished Master Sergeant turned to address him quietly. Look at her loading techniques, soldier. Look at how she's maintaining that combat weight. You don't learn that level of equipment mastery in regular loading school. Rosa demonstrated advanced equipment procedures while maintaining the full special operations load. My previous unit was restructured because we discovered that enemy forces were obtaining American equipment specifications through defense contractors who were supposed to be supporting our loading system development. The staging area erupted into controlled equipment activity as soldiers began coordinating immediate operational responses. Sergeant Major Williams activated emergency equipment protocols, his face showing a combination of shock and professional determination. This equipment staging area will implement immediate enhanced procedures, he declared, his voice steady despite obvious emotional impact. But before anyone could fully process the implications, Rosa continued while still carrying the full combat load. Sergeant Major, this equipment configuration has been optimized using intelligence about our loading limitations that I've spent 18 months analyzing. I've gathered evidence about the capability transfers that led to my unit's restructuring. This represents the same operational pattern, same equipment methods, same systematic enhancement. Sergeant Major Williams slowly approached Rosa, his operational authority visibly affected by recognition. He nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement and renewed professional respect. Task Force Mountain Thunder was classified above top secret. Rosa continued, maintaining perfect posture with the combat load. Our mission involved developing equipment loading capabilities for special operations in extreme environments. We discovered that our loading technology was being systematically enhanced through collaboration with specialized development programs. She maintained the full equipment load while displaying her expertise. This combat configuration represents 18 months of equipment development, loading techniques, and operational optimization that proves how our capabilities were being systematically improved. This loading demonstration isn't successful because of basic training. It's effective because someone finally implemented proper equipment techniques based on specialized capabilities. Captain Davis attempted to restore normal equipment briefing procedures, but found himself struggling with the operational implications. Private Martinez, this represents highly irregular equipment demonstration procedures. My unit was restructured and scattered to continue investigating capability enhancements. Rosa continued with professional calm while maintaining the full load. I was the designated equipment specialist who maintained all our loading development data and operational enhancement documentation. I've spent 18 months working in regular assignments while continuing to develop techniques and waiting for the right opportunity to demonstrate enhanced loading capabilities. Staff Sergeant Johnson approached Rosa with obvious concern and growing professional respect. Specialist Thunder, if what you're demonstrating is accurate, how did you maintain access to specialized equipment capabilities, and why choose this loading demonstration to reveal your background? Rosa's professional composure never wavered as she maintained the full combat load. I maintained access because I never officially left specialized equipment operations. My assignment to regular equipment support was designed to continue development while Task Force Mountain Thunder investigated capability enhancements. When the investigation concluded and the unit restructured, I continued developing techniques using legitimate access to equipment systems. She indicated her demonstration while maintaining the combat load. I chose this moment because specialized equipment loading capabilities represent the difference between mission success and failure in extreme environments. If soldiers can't carry the equipment they need, operational effectiveness is compromised regardless of tactical planning. The distinguished Master Sergeant approached the briefing area. Sergeant Major, request permission to address the equipment staff. I am Master Sergeant Harrison, recently returned from assignment with Special Operations Equipment. I worked with Task Force Mountain Thunder during their specialized loading development programs. He turned to face Rosa. Specialist Thunder was one of the most skilled equipment loading operators I encountered during my career. Her loading techniques represent the highest standards of special operations capability. Captain Davis interjected with growing understanding. Ma'am, the equipment procedures you've developed, the loading innovations that have enhanced our operational capability, those were based on your specialized experience? Correct, Rosa replied while maintaining the full equipment load. Every loading improvement I've implemented was designed to ensure that soldiers can carry mission-critical equipment effectively regardless of environmental conditions. I've seen the consequences of equipment failures, and I've dedicated myself to developing loading techniques that prevent operational limitations. Sergeant Major Williams addressed the entire staging area. Specialist Thunder's demonstration proves that effective equipment loading requires specialized training and physical conditioning that exceeds standard military requirements. Her techniques represent advanced capabilities that enhance operational effectiveness. The loading procedures you've witnessed represent Specialist Thunder's commitment to excellence in military equipment operations, he continued. Her demonstration proves that specialized training and dedication can achieve loading capabilities that enhance mission effectiveness. As the morning progressed, various personnel approached Rosa to acknowledge her capabilities and express gratitude for equipment innovations that had directly enhanced their operational effectiveness during various mission phases. The Master Sergeant presented Rosa with recognition from multiple units whose equipment operations had been enhanced by her loading improvements and technique innovations over the previous months. Staff Sergeant Johnson formally thanked Rosa for the equipment analysis that had enhanced loading effectiveness during the most demanding phases of mission preparation. Sergeant Major Williams concluded the demonstration by announcing that Specialist Thunder would continue her equipment work while also developing new loading procedures to enhance operational effectiveness. The success of this demonstration proves that American military effectiveness depends not just on standard procedures, but also on soldiers like Specialist Thunder who develop advanced capabilities that exceed normal expectations, he announced. As the staging area returned to operations, participants continued approaching Rosa to acknowledge her capabilities and discuss how her equipment work had enhanced their operational effectiveness during various loading operations. Rosa finally set down the combat load after maintaining it throughout her entire explanation, demonstrating not just initial strength, but sustained capability that exceeded every expectation. The transformation from questioned support soldier to acknowledged equipment expert represented not just personal recognition, but validation of the critical importance of specialized training in developing enhanced military capabilities. Sergeant Major Williams's challenge had backfired completely, instead revealing expertise and capabilities that transformed understanding of equipment loading and the specialized training required to achieve exceptional performance. The demonstration concluded with restored confidence in enhanced equipment capabilities, but also with recognition of the dedication and specialized training required to achieve loading performance that exceeds standard military expectations. As personnel departed, many continued discussing the implications of Rosa's capabilities and the equipment innovations that would enhance future loading operations and technique procedures. The Sergeant Major's unexpected challenge had transformed understanding of not just Rosa's qualifications, but the broader possibilities for enhancing American equipment operations through specialized training and dedicated development. Rosa's demonstration represented both personal vindication and institutional recognition of the specialized capabilities that could be achieved through advanced training and dedicated preparation in military equipment operations. The morning that had begun as routine equipment loading had become a comprehensive demonstration of enhanced capabilities and the specialized training required to develop loading techniques that exceed standard military expectations. Sergeant Major Williams's challenge had revealed capabilities that represented broader recognition that successful military operations required not just standard procedures, but also specialized training capabilities and the commitment of soldiers willing to exceed normal expectations through advanced preparation. As the staging area returned to routine operations, the impact of Rosa's demonstration continued to influence equipment planning and loading procedures, ensuring that future operations would benefit from enhanced techniques and systematic improvements developed through specialized training. The transformation of a routine equipment challenge into comprehensive demonstration of enhanced capabilities represented the critical importance of specialized training in military effectiveness and the dedication of soldiers who develop advanced techniques through exceptional preparation. As morning transitioned to afternoon, the forward operating base settled into routine equipment operations, but with enhanced appreciation for the specialized training that enabled exceptional loading capabilities and the ongoing dedication required to develop techniques that exceed standard military expectations. The day's demonstration had transformed understanding of equipment loading from routine procedures to specialized capabilities, demonstrating the evolving nature of military operations and the advanced training required to achieve exceptional performance. Rosa's demonstration represented both personal recognition and institutional commitment to developing the specialized capabilities necessary to enhance military operations and maintain equipment loading techniques that enable mission success through exceptional performance. The Sergeant Major's challenge had elevated understanding of successful equipment operations from standard procedures to specialized capabilities, emphasizing the critical importance of advanced training while supporting military operations through dedicated equipment professionals who exceed normal expectations.